You know, as the lawsuits will show, I wasn't entirely surprised. I think that he is a bad person. I wish he had never met my sister. I wish they still weren't married. And I think he is violent, and I think he is greedy. And I am just so thankful that Placer County has taken him into custody, because that's where he should be.
In her civil suit, Adrienne alleged that Daniel was financially motivated to kill her parents. She further claimed that Aaron lured the couple out of the home that day so Daniel could enter the house undetected. However, investigators found no evidence to support the claim that Aaron intentionally left a door open. Police investigated Erin Serafini and never criminally charged her. Instead, the prosecution focused its case squarely on the two people they could place at the scene, Daniel Serafini and Samantha Scott. With the circle of suspects narrowed down to just two, investigators simply had to wait for one of them to break. They didn't have to wait long. For 15 months following their arrest, Samantha Scott sat in a cell. As the reality of a potential life sentence set in, loyalty to Daniel eventually gave way to survival. By January 2025, she was ready to cut a deal. In an interview with prosecutors, she sat down for a Queen for a Day proffer. Basically, it's a protected interview where she could speak freely without fear of her words being used against her in court. With that safety net in place, she dropped the bombshell that explained her loyalty. She and Daniel were having an intense emotional and sexual affair. She admitted that the relationship was the driving force behind years of lies. Weeks later, Samantha pled guilty to being an accessory after the fact, and in exchange, the state dropped more serious murder and burglary charges against her. She now faces a sentence of 16 months to 3 years. Following the hearing, she was released with an ankle monitor, leaving Daniel to face the jury alone. As of the date of this upload, her sentencing hearing has not yet been scheduled. The trial of California versus Daniel Serafini began on May 19, 2025. The courtroom was packed, reflecting the high-profile nature of a case involving a former Major League Baseball player accused of executing his wealthy in-laws. Prosecutors painted a picture of a man humiliated by his own failure, living in a trailer and hating the man who paid his bills. They argued this wasn't a crime of passion, it was a transaction. To Daniel, Gary Spoor was worth more dead than alive. The prosecution zeroed in on a nasty fight over a renovation project, pointing to it as the main source of the bad blood between the two men. They argued that while Gary was writing the checks, he controlled every dime, and that dynamic, Daniel needing the cash but hating the oversight, is what finally pushed him over the edge. To support this theory, prosecutors presented a series of explosive messages authored by Daniel that highlighted his growing resentment toward Gary.
But the fighting never stops for 10 years. Approximately 1 year into the marriage, I'll pay $20,000 to have him killed. I said it more than once. 2016, I hate them. They're wealthy pieces. Eric Bunner, March of 2021, 3 months before Gary and Wendy are shot. I'm going to kill them one day. This was way more than just keyboard warriors. The emotions were taken, and he would just talk about it and tell other people and actually use the words kill. Do people say that? Yeah, they do. But in the context of this case, at some point words have to matter.
In addition to the messages, evidence was introduced showing that less than an hour before being shot, Wendy Wood had handed Aaron a check for $90,000. Prosecutors highlighted the disturbing reality that Daniel shot his in-laws less than 60 minutes after they had performed a grand gesture of generosity for his family. With no DNA and no gun, the prosecution relied on forensic video analysis. An expert testified that the masked killer on the video walked with a specific limp, a biomechanical match to Daniel's gait caused by his old pitching injuries. As for the murder weapon, while the gun was never found, ballistics from the scene matched the type of weapon Daniel was known to have access to. Samantha Scott's testimony was devastating. She admitted to driving the getaway car and described a chilling scene on the ride home. Daniel in the passenger seat, methodically taking the gun apart. She heard clicking noises she recognized from TV, then watched as he threw the components, a PVC pipe, and his clothing out the window onto the highway. She also revealed that Daniel wasn't guessing about the entry point. He told her the back door would be unlocked. But the prosecution wasn't finished with the women in Daniel's life. When his wife Erin took the stand, she delivered a few bombshells of her own.
Michelle, you were in the courtroom for Erin Spore's testimony today. She testified about her relationship with her husband and his former lover. What did she say specifically?
Well, yeah, Erin Spore told the jury that she and her husband, Dan Serafini, have always had an open sexual marriage. And she says she did realize at some point that Serafini was friends first with Samantha Scott, his former lover and former co-defendant in this case. And then eventually it turned into a sexual relationship. But she says she didn't find out recently that it was an emotional relationship, that it eventually turned to that, and that they had been in love with each other until after people were sending news articles about Samantha Scott's testimony here in the murder trial, talking about being in love with each other. Now, there are no cameras allowed in the video, but take a look. This is video of Erin Spore arriving at the Auburn courthouse today, and she testified on many subjects, from those relationships we just talked about, relationship with her parents. She said she and her parents had many arguments and that her mother, quote, cut her off at least 30 times since she was 18 years old. Now, on the day of the shootings, Spore testified she had made plans to spend June 5th, 2021 with her parents and their children at their Lake Tahoe home, taking the boat out on the lake. She says her husband was always invited to his in-laws' homes, but on this day was not part of the original plans. That was the day of the attack. Now, Spore says she knew of the that he did know of the planned visit, and she also says she didn't see or know if anyone else was in the home after their day on the lake. They went back to hang out and have dinner. Now, prosecutors allege Serafini went into the home while they were all out on the lake and waited to shoot his in-laws until after his wife and his children left the home. Now, Spore also testified that she has immunity and nothing that she testifies to can be used against her in a criminal case. Again, she is still married to Serafini, and she's still going to be on the stand when court resumes on Thursday. She's still under direct examination, taking on a lot of information for the jury. Reporting live in Auburn, Michelle Bandur, KCRA 3 News.
Well, Michelle, prosecutors, they asked her about wanting to divorce Serafini a few years after marriage. And what's this we're hearing about a post-nuptial agreement that was signed?
Yeah, that's right, Curtis. The prosecutor asked her about wanting to get a divorce in about 2015. They got married in 2011. And she says, yeah, she thought about it. And that also, she said, who doesn't think about that after being married to someone for so long? She says her parents did not push her into getting a divorce. And then she also brought up how Wendy Wood, her mother, wanted Serafini to sign this post-nuptial agreement saying that he's not entitled to any of their worth of about $23 million. However, the prosecutor showed the jury another document that says Serafini is entitled to about 100,000 shares of a corporation they have in Washington, but that's only if he stays married to Erin Spore. So just a lot to unpack here for the jury.
During the opening statements, the prosecution stated that family tensions and money served as the motive for the crime, but Erin Spore says not everything was as bad as some people might think. During the trial, thousands of emails revealed heated exchanges between the family over money, business, and even the care of the children. Erin Spore testified that the conflicts never turned physical, that the family always made up, and that she did not believe any of this was enough reason for Daniel to commit murder. Spore testified that she was supportive of Daniel writing a book to cover legal expenses, had contacted some publishers herself, and that the book would cover Daniel's baseball career leading up to the events of 2021. She also testified that she believes Samantha Scott has been deceptive deceptive, specifically when telling the court that Daniel confessed to her that he had shot his mother-in-law, Wendy Wood, who died roughly 2 years later. Spore says Scott was a close friend up until she was arrested, and they are no longer in contact. One odd moment in court today was when both sides questioned Erin Spore about Scott's clothing style and physical appearance after her release from jail. The defense showed a set of media photos in court today, pointing out that recent images of Scott's hairstyle and clothing resemble that of Erin Spore when she was photographed previously at a preliminary hearing. Erin Spore testified and reportedly told an investigator that she believes Scott is trying to be her, calling the behavior, quote, creepy.
The defense's strategy was to rely on reasonable doubt, emphasizing that despite a massive and lengthy investigation, no DNA, fingerprints, or murder weapon ever linked Daniel to the scene. Attorney David Dratman attacked the financial motive with the Golden Goose defense. He asked the jury, why would a man in debt kill the people paying his bills? It didn't make any sense. The defense further argued that the masked intruder on video appeared smaller than the former pitcher and reminded the jury that Erin testified that it was not her husband in the video. Lastly, they urged the jury to reject Samantha's testimony, characterizing her as a liar who threw Daniel under the bus in order to save her own skin. Closing arguments wrapped up on Thursday, July 10th. One side claimed Daniel Serafini committed a calculated execution, while the other insisted there was insufficient physical proof to find him guilty. Now it was the bottom of the ninth for Daniel, and everything was on the line. Because of the special circumstances attached to his murder charge, specifically lying in wait, he was facing life in prison without parole. For 2.5 days, the jury was locked away, analyzing the surveillance footage frame by frame. Then, on Monday, July 14th, the room went silent as the bailiff handed the verdict form to the judge.
All right, verdict is to count one. People of the State of California, plaintiff versus Daniel Joseph Serafini, defendant. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Daniel Joseph Serafini, guilty of a violation of California Penal Code Section 187A, murder, a felony as charged in count 1 of the third amended information. We further find the degree of murder to be that of murder in the first degree. And that is signed and dated by our foreperson. To our foreperson first, is that the verdict of the jury?
It is.
All right.
It's been 4 years since my mom and dad were shot, and it's been 4 years of just hell. And the Placer County District Attorney's Office and Sheriff's Office never gave up, and today finally justice was served.
Well, not quite just yet. Although a jury convicted Daniel Serafini in July 2025, this case isn't over. As of the date of this upload, his sentencing has been indefinitely delayed because his defense team filed a motion for a new trial, claiming jury misconduct. Specifically, they allege the jury used computers to zoom in and manipulate screenshots of the surveillance video, creating their own side-by-side comparisons of the killer's shoes versus Daniel's. The argument is that by enhancing the footage themselves, the jurors effectively created new evidence that the defense never got a chance to challenge. Until a judge rules on this motion, Serafini's mandatory sentence of life without parole cannot be imposed. As he is not eligible for bail, he remains in custody while the legal process plays out. For Adrienne Spore, this legal limbo is just one last insult. After waiting years for an arrest and enduring a painful trial, she now has to wait for a judge to decide if a few zoomed-in photos are enough to restart the whole process. Let us know what you think in the comments. Did the jury cross the line, or is the defense grasping at straws? Thanks for watching, and we'll keep you updated as soon as the judge rules on the motion for a new trial.